Namaskara. This is Aparajita Ghildiyal from the Department of Public Administration, KSOU. In this video lecture series, we are looking at important topics from Indian polity. Let us first decode the term preamble. The origin of the word preamble is taken from a Latin word preambulus, which means to go before or introduction in common everyday terminology. In a speech, it is often that part which precedes the main body of the speech, giving a hint of what one can expect in the due course of time. As it comes before the main speech, it is referred to as preamble. If we take the case of a book, it is basically the preface that precedes the contents of a particular book. In common everyday terminology, it is nothing but an introduction. Thus, a preamble is an introductory note that states the following things. Firstly, the purpose or the use of that particular document. Number two, the ideas, values, principles, and the philosophical basis of that document. And thirdly and finally, the objectives and the aspirational goals that a particular document aims to achieve. Therefore, preamble is often referred to as the blueprint of a document. If one reviews the preamble, one can get a clear idea as to what one can expect from that document. The preamble is hence a brief synopsis of the Indian Constitution. The present form of the preamble that preludes the Indian Constitution has its origin in the Objectives Resolution that was presented before the Constituent Assembly by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on the 13th of December 1946. This Objectives Resolution forms the basis of the preamble of the Indian Constitution. The Objectives Resolution highlighted the objectives and the aspirations of the makers of the Indian Constitution and presented the idea of the state that they wanted to give to the fellow Indians. The same was later adopted as the preamble of the Indian Constitution on the 26th of November 1949 and came into effect on the 26th of January 1950. Let us see what the text of the preamble says. It goes as follows. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to secure to all of its citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Thus, as we have observed, the preamble predominantly highlights four key points. These are also called as the four main ingredients of the preamble. They are as follows. Number one, the source of power, which is the people of this country or the citizens. Number two, the nature of the Indian state, which is democratic and republic. Number three, the objectives of the Constitution and what it wants to offer to the citizens of this country. And number four, the date of the enactment of this Constitution. The debate was to find out whether the constituent powers of the Parliament were absolute or were with restraints. So Article number 368 allows the Indian Parliament to amend any part of the Indian Constitution. However, there was a debate which raged on which said that this power of the Indian Constitution was not absolute. Certain cases said that it was, and this led to some sort of a confusion. In 1960, In the Re-Berubari case versus Unknown, the Supreme Court of India ruled that the preamble was not part of the Indian Constitution and hence the Indian Parliament did not have any power to amend preamble, and therefore it was something which was beyond the constituent powers of the Indian Parliament. However, in the Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala case of 1973, Supreme Court rejected its earlier opinion and held that the preamble is a part of the Indian Constitution. The court also said that the constituent power of the Indian Parliament was absolute and that the Indian Parliament could amend anything in the Indian Constitution provided it did not alter the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. Thus, with the 1973 Keshavananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court clearly defined the constituent powers of the Indian Parliament and gave the basic structure doctrine. In 1995, the LIC of India versus the Consumer Education and Research Centre case, the Supreme Court again held that the preamble is an integral part of the Indian Constitution. In the S.R. Bommai case of 1994, the Supreme Court explicitly stated that the preamble was the part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution and thus it could not be adversely altered as per the whims and fancies of the Parliament. However, the interesting fact about the preamble is that it was enacted after the Indian Constitution was enacted, and that is why there has been some confusion over it. However, in the recent cases it was all clarified and presently there is only one Constitutional Amendment Act that has altered the preamble. Interesting fact about the Indian preamble is that it was enacted after the entire Constitution was enacted, and this led to some of the confusions that led to the cases like the Keshavananda Bharati case declaring the preamble to be an integral part of the Indian Constitution. As we previously saw, the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 added 3 new terms to the preamble. These terms are number 1, secular, number 2, socialist, and number 3, integrity. The preamble since then has never been amended again. The ideal of justice, social, economic, and political in the preamble has been borrowed from the former Soviet Union's constitution, presently the Russian constitution. The preamble also secures to all the citizens of India liberty of belief, faith, and worship. Republic and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity were borrowed from the French Constitution. The preamble in itself was first introduced in the American Constitution, and thereafter it was adopted in the constitutions of other countries that followed. This particular topic is also very famous from competitive exam point of view, and questions several times appears from this unit. So let's see some of the questions that have frequently appeared in exams. Let's take question number 1. Which of the following words was later introduced in the preamble of the Indian Constitution? Option A, sovereign. Option B, socialist. Option C, democratic. Option D, republic. The answer to the question is option B, socialist. The word socialist was added by the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act of 1976. That is why it's a later entry into the Indian Constitution. Let's see question number 2. How many times was the preamble of the Constitution amended? Option A, 1. Option B, 3. Option 3, 2. Option D, it has never been amended so far. Correct. So the answer to this question is option A, only one time. The preamble has been amended only one time by the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act of 1976. Question number 3. Which of the following years is related to the Re-Berubari versus Unknown case? Option A, 1972. Option B, 1976. option C 1970 and option D 1960. The correct answer to this question is option D 1960. Who among the following said that the preamble of the Indian Constitution is the keynote of the Constitution? Option A Ernst Barker, B Jawaharlal Nehru, C Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, D Nelson Mandela. The answer is option A. Ernst Barker said that the Constitution's keynote is the preamble. We come to the end of this lecture. Today we have seen that the preamble is a keynote of the Constitution of India and it is synonymous with the term summary. It represents the contents of the Constitution of India in a nutshell and hence is an integral part of the Indian Constitution. Thank you for joining us today.